Getting a sexually transmitted disease from your husband is hitting absolute rock bottom. But his mom stopping by to tell you to stick it out is a whole new level of psychological disrespect. This woman just executed a retaliatory strike so petty and undeniably brilliant, it requires taking notes. So, our writer is married to a guy named Matthew. She finds out he is cheating in the worst way humanly possible. He literally gives her chlamydia. During the explosive fallout, she uncovers that he has been having multiple other affairs and immediately files for divorce. She is actively packing her bags to move out of the house her mother in law owns and had been renting to them cheaply when the mother in law decides to pay a visit. Instead of apologizing for her son being a walking biohazard, this woman looks our writer dead in the eye and tells her she needs to work on the marriage and not give up so easily. The audacity is actually breathtaking. So the writer completely flips the script. She looks at her mother in law and asks for advice on how she dealt with her own husband's affair 5 years ago. The mother in law starts stammering, completely blindsided. The writer casually adds that Matthew begged her to keep her mouth shut about his dad's infidelity, then watches the mother in law storm out of the house. Within hours, a massive screaming match erupts with the father in law denying everything and Matthew having absolutely no idea what is going on. The mother in law is furious at both of them. But here is the absolute kicker. The writer completely fabricated the father in law's affair out of thin air. We really need to pause and look at the sheer destruction that just happened. The writer looked a woman in the face and fabricated a devastating lie to blow up a decades-long marriage just to make a point. That is not just petty, that is dropping a psychological grenade into someone else's living room. She claims she just wanted to be left alone and forced the mother-in-law to see her point of view. But manipulating reality to inflict emotional damage is a massive escalation. And what about the mother in law? Why is she so desperate to protect a son who brought a literal disease into his marital bed? It is that classic, deeply toxic defense mechanism where a parent refuses to admit they raised a villain. If she acknowledges Matthew as a monster, it reflects poorly on her parenting, so she tries to bully the victim into maintaining the status quo. This brings us to a massively frustrating reality about how society handles betrayal. There is this deeply ingrained, horrific expectation that women are supposed to be the emotional shock absorbers for male bad behavior. When a man steps out, the immediate cultural reflex is often to ask the wife what she is going to do to save the family. It's the ultimate weaponization of forgiveness. We ask the person bleeding out to bandage the person who stabbed them. It happens in families, friend groups, and communities everywhere. People will protect the peace over protecting the victim, demanding that you swallow your trauma so Sunday dinner does not get awkward. The internet courtroom was completely fractured over this tactic. One commenter came in hot, throwing down a harsh judgment, arguing that everybody sucks here. They listed the writer as the absolute worst offender for lying to her mother-in-law about the father-in-law having an affair, putting her crime above the mother-in-law's toxic advice and even the husband's actual cheating. They argued that fabricating a lie for revenge is entirely different from just trying to teach someone a lesson. But the internet was not having it, and the rebuttal was absolutely merciless. Another user dug into the writer's updates and dropped a massive truth bomb. The father-in-law actually helped Matthew cover up the real affairs. The father-in-law had been making up fake golf Saturdays and overnight fishing trips to give Matthew an alibi to go cheat. As one commenter ruthlessly pointed out, if the father-in-law is willing to cover for his son, he is likely an experienced cheater himself and totally deserves the chaos. The consensus violently shifted to labeling her a justified asshole, with people applauding the writer for giving that family a forced lesson in empathy. The verdict here is crystal clear. Yes, the writer is technically an a-hole for weaponizing a lie, but it is the most glorious, justified a-hole move in internet history. You do not get to harbor a cheating, disease-spreading son, help him build alibis, and then demand the victim stay married. If the writer really wants to deliver the final nail in the coffin, she needs to send this exact text to the mother-in-law. I made up the affair so you would finally understand how it feels to have your reality shattered. But while we are dealing with the truth, you should know your husband was the one faking golf and fishing trips to help Matthew hide his mistresses. Good luck working on your marriage. You can take the high road, or you can take the truth and burn the bridge to ashes. What would you do? Would you drop a fake affair to prove a point or just walk away? Let me know in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe for more absolute chaos. Your parents sit you down to announce their divorce, but instead of the usual speech about growing apart, your mom tells you your dad is a cheater, only for him to fire back and reveal they have not been intimate in 3 years, and she cut him off completely. Welcome to the absolute wildest family dinner of the year. This 27-year-old writer is currently stuck in the middle of a nuclear family meltdown. His parents are in their late 40s, definitely still young enough to start over, but his mom recently dropped a bomb saying she is just entirely done with intimacy. She had zero interest, and it went from once every couple of months to a hard, permanent stop. The dad, likely panicking at the thought of a 40-year celibacy sentence, essentially asks if they can open the marriage. Mom immediately takes that as proof he is going to step out on her, files for divorce, and starts a smear campaign calling him a total cheater to their adult children. Now, the writer's 24-year-old sister is fully buying into the mom's narrative. She is icing out the dad, calling him a mass, and losing her mind because the writer is still grabbing dinner with him. The dad is actually doing pretty well and has already started dating someone new, which is where the real drama ignites. He posted a Facebook photo of himself with his grandkids, and the mom and sister saw it. They completely lost it, furious that the writer is taking the side of a so-called cheater. The writer feels like he is just being the only logical adult in the room, wanting to maintain a separate relationship with both of his parents without getting dragged into their bedroom politics. It is incredibly easy to just nod along with the writer, but we need to put his story under the microscope for a second. He claims to be the neutral Switzerland in this messy divorce, but he openly admits he has always been super close to his dad and had way more in common with him growing up. Is he really being objective, or is he just giving his favorite parent a massive pass? Think about the dad's timeline here. He asked for an open marriage, the mom filed for divorce, and suddenly he is already dating someone new and bringing her around his grandkids. That speed is highly suspicious. It is entirely possible that the dad already had someone specific lined up, and the open marriage request was just a deceptive motive to physicalize an emotional affair he was already having. If you already have a girlfriend on standby before the ink on the divorce papers is even printed, your hands are not exactly clean. But looking at the mom, her behavior is straight out of a damage control playbook. She ended the marriage by filing the papers, but she desperately wants to be the victim. She is weaponizing the word cheater against the father of her children because she knows saying, "I refuse to work on our physical relationship," does not win you any sympathy points with your friends or your daughter. She is pulling a massive Darvo maneuver: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. By controlling the narrative and poisoning her daughter against the dad, she gets to keep a clean conscience and avoid taking any responsibility for the fact that she shut down a massive part of their marriage. This whole disaster rips the lid off a massive conversation that society absolutely refuses to have: what actually happens to a marriage when menopause hits. We expect couples to just magically navigate massive, life-altering hormonal shifts with zero roadmap. A woman's body basically goes through reverse puberty in her late 40s, and the medical system just shrugs and shoves her out the door. Doctors will literally refuse to prescribe hormone replacement therapies out of outdated fears, leaving women to feel broken, exhausted, and completely stripped of their drive. On top of that, women are often drowning in weaponized incompetence, doing all the household chores, and feeling more like a mother to their husbands than a romantic partner. But here is the brutal, undeniable truth. While a medical or exhaustion issue entirely explains the dead bedroom, it absolutely does not excuse demanding your partner live like a monk for the next 4 decades. There is a devastating emotional toll on the partner who is constantly rejected, Being forced into a celibacy you never agreed to is deeply isolating. You honor your partner's boundaries, you stop begging to get your rocks off, but eventually it stops being about the physical act and starts being about basic self respect. In a healthy relationship, intimacy is about feeling wanted and maintaining that vital emotional connection. When one partner unilaterally decides that part of the marriage is permanently over and refuses to even try to find a solution, they are essentially telling their spouse that their needs are completely irrelevant. You cannot arbitrarily change the rules of a 30-year game and then act shocked when the other person decides to walk off the field. The comment section on this story turned into an absolute war zone over what actually counts as betrayal. One wildly controversial take pointed the finger squarely at the dad, arguing that the mere act of asking for an open marriage is horrifying and grounds for divorce all on its own. They accused him of treating his wife like a broken appliance that he just wanted to replace, arguing he should have exhausted every single option like doctors and couples therapy before dropping that nuke. But the savage rebuttal that completely leveled that argument pointed out the hypocrisy of the mom's outrage. Someone brilliantly noted that calling it cheating when he literally asked for a solution is just pure manipulation. He did not cheat. He asked for permission, got denied, and accepted the divorce. As one commenter perfectly summarized, your mom is within her rights to not provide intimacy, but your dad is entirely within his rights to leave a sexually exclusive relationship with someone who is refusing sex. If the needs are incompatible, the ethical choice is to leave, which is exactly what happened. The writer is absolutely not the a-hole for having a beer with his dad and wanting to maintain a normal relationship. The true villainy here is parents dragging their adult children into their bedroom politics and demanding blind loyalty to soothe their own egos. If the writer wants to shut this circus down and protect his own peace, he needs to send his mom and sister this exact text message today. I love you both, but I am not the judge in this divorce. Dad is my dad, and my relationship with him has absolutely nothing to do with why your marriage ended. If we are going to hang out, we are not talking about him, and we are definitely not talking about your sex life. If you bring it up, I am leaving. It is called a hard boundary, and it is time to build a 10-foot wall with it. What would you do if your parents tried to force you to pick a side in their romantic fallout? Would you cut contact or play the peacemaker? Let me know down in the comments and hit that subscribe button if you love a healthy dose of pure family chaos. Imagine finding out your 13-year-old son snagged the prettiest girl in school, only for your husband to completely freak out because she uses a wheelchair. Today, we are diving into a household completely divided by a middle school romance. Our writer is 39, and her 37-year-old husband, James, is throwing a massive tantrum over their freshman son, Lucas. After the Christmas break, a new 14-year-old girl named Yuki joined Lucas's class. For weeks, Lucas and his friends could not stop talking about how Yuki was from another country, super cool, and undeniably the prettiest girl in the entire school. They never once mentioned her disability. It was not until Lucas announced they were officially dating and the writer went to pick him up from school that she realized Yuki was actually in a wheelchair. When Lucas showed James her Facebook profile, James acted totally fine to his face. But the second they were alone together, James completely spiraled, claiming their young son had no idea what he was getting himself into. The writer simply called her husband silly for overreacting, which instantly set him off, leaving her wondering if she was actually in the wrong here. Let us put the writer under the microscope for a minute. She thinks she handled this perfectly by brushing off her husband's anxiety with the word silly, but she is massively downplaying the severity of his reaction. Calling a grown man silly when he is exhibiting clear, deep-seated prejudice is like putting a tiny band-aid on a gaping wound. It is the toddler-level adjective for a toddler-level tantrum. When she pressed James for an actual reason why he was so concerned, this normally articulate man started fumbling his words and could not string together a logical explanation. When people fumble like that, it is because they know their underlying reasoning is completely awful and socially unacceptable. James is not reacting based on logic. He is reacting to an internal bias. He had this crystal clear future vision of what his family and future daughter in law should look like, and a girl in a wheelchair simply shattered that picture. He is looking at this 14-year-old girl and seeing a burden instead of a human being, completely ignoring the fact that his son just sees a beautiful, cool person. This entire situation rips the lid off a massive, terrifying reality that no one ever wants to talk about. Ableism is so deeply baked into our society that people genuinely believe disabled individuals should just be grateful to have a partner at all. The comments were flooded with disabled women sharing their own heartbreaking experiences with this exact mindset. One user remembered being just 13 years old when an old creep told her she should take what she could get because she would not have many romantic opportunities in life. She brilliantly fired back that she would rather be single forever than date him. There is this grotesque, unspoken rule where able bodied people view themselves as saints just for being in the same room as a disabled person. But here is the absolute wildest part: disability is the only minority group you can join at any literal second. You are one bad car ride, one random illness, or one slip on the ice away from needing that exact same wheelchair. And if we are lucky enough to not die young, every single one of us will eventually become disabled as we age. The statistics surrounding this are absolutely chilling. Studies show that a staggering 21% of husbands abandon their wives after a severe medical diagnosis like cancer, compared to a mere 3% of wives who leave sick husbands. It happens so frequently that hospitals literally have prepared scripts and resource packets ready for female patients because doctors just know the husband is going to bolt. Users shared terrifying personal stories, like a father who completely neglected his sick wife, skipped her chemo appointments, and moved on with a new partner less than a month after she passed away. If James is this completely unglued over his teenage son holding hands with a wheelchair user, how fast would he pack his bags if his own wife got into an accident tomorrow? The comment section absolutely erupted, and it was a total bloodbath of perspectives. One incredibly generous commenter tried to play defense for James, arguing that maybe he just had valid logistical concerns about the future. They claimed that a good dad would naturally worry about making the house accessible, planning safe transportation for dates, and worrying about the severe stress of his son eventually becoming a full-time caregiver. They argued that James was just being a protective parent who was aware of the harsh reality and difficulties his son would face down the road. But the internet absolutely demolished that hot take with a savage dose of reality. The rebuttal hit hard and fast. These kids are barely 13 years old. They are literally just talking about their feelings, sending texts, and maybe holding hands at the mall. They are not signing mortgage papers, merging bank accounts, or discussing in-home nursing care. It is a middle school romance that might not even survive until summer vacation. Treating a freshman relationship like a lifetime binding contract just to justify blatant ableism is absolutely ridiculous. Furthermore, a wheelchair is a mobility tool that provides freedom. It does not automatically mean the user needs a full-time nurse. Many wheelchair users live completely independent lives, making excellent money and raising families. The final verdict is undeniable. The writer is absolutely not the a-hole for supporting her incredibly mature son, but her husband is a walking, talking red flag. Lucas and his friends are the true heroes here, proving that the younger generation is genuinely miles ahead of us when it comes to empathy and seeing people for who they truly are. But James needs a massive reality check before he infects his son with his outdated prejudices. The writer cannot just let this slide with a gentle scolding. She needs to draw a hard line in the sand tonight. If she wants to shut this nonsense down completely, she should send James this exact, non-negotiable text message. I am incredibly proud of Lucas for judging people by their character instead of their physical limitations. Your reaction to a 14-year-old girl in a wheelchair is deeply concerning, and honestly, it makes me wonder if you would abandon me if I ever got sick. You need to drop this immediately and support your son, because I will not let you project your ableism onto a harmless middle school romance. You can sit back and hope he miraculously grows a conscience, or you can force him to look in the mirror. What would you do if your partner showed this kind of ugly bias? Would you demand couples counseling or just protect your kid? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and hit that subscribe button for more unbelievable drama.